Hey, it's Jared with State of Tech. This is my comparison and review of the Fold4 and the Flip4. For those of you that are maybe on the fence as to trying out one of these devices, hopefully this video will help you make a decision. Now, I've actually filmed this video already, but I ditched it, scratched it, it never saw the light of day, and I'm refilming it again because I've spent more time with these devices. Now, before I jump into all of the comparison things and talk about my experiences utilizing both of these devices, let me first tell you that these are two phones that you cannot just go into and use the same way that you've been used to using standard smartphones. Like, standard smartphones have a screen on the front, they don't fold, they don't do anything different, and we've learned to use them for what they are. But these phones operate different, and they require thinking differently in order to maximize them and find the true value in the devices. So first, we're going to look at the form factors, and you can see that both of these phones have cases on them. I'm a big fan of putting cases on my devices because they scratch easy, they break easy. Despite how many times they say they're stronger, they're gonna get scratched, they're gonna get nicked, and cases definitely help with the protection. I have a case review video for both of these devices, so make sure to check those out if you're interested. So there is a difference between these two different devices, and one is a flip and one is a fold. So as we flip open one device like this, we have one screen here, very tall, narrow screen that we get, and now it is more of a traditional style smartphone once you open it up. When you close the device, you have the cover screen right here with widget, limited widget type information. It's got more than before, but still a small kind of limited screen just to give you quick access to information. Now on the Fold4, we have a large cover screen on the front that is more like a smartphone, just narrow. And then when we open up the device, unfold the device, we have a nice large display right in the middle. And that is the difference between these, flip versus fold. We've got screen size versus compact size. And so those are two different things to think of. As we look at the devices, yes, this one seems pretty thick because I have a case on it, but in the grand scheme of things, it is relatively small in comparison to the Fold4. So I look at this also as comfort versus convenience. Like, this is nice to put in your pocket and have something small that is not, I mean, I can put this in one of my front pocket of my jeans and I can sit down comfortably with I don't feel like I'm folding a phone in half or snapping it or hurting the phone. This is just comfortable, but it's not as convenient because opening up this phone one-handed is kind of tricky. Trying to do much with the phone closed is tricky, whereas with this device we've got a lot going on, and I find it more convenient because we have the cover screen for quick action stuff, we've got the large screen inside for more productivity minded things. So let's talk about the features. Now let's talk about screen resolution. If we have both phones sitting here, we've got the Flip4 open and we've got the cover screen of the Fold4, and I went ahead and removed the S Pen from the back of the Fold4 just so that we can set this phone down flat and kind of get a view of the comparison here. Both of these have a fixed resolution. They're not adjustable like a lot of other phones. I can't go into a higher resolution and then go down to a lower resolution to save on battery. They're fixed resolution, but the cover display on the Fold4 is similar to the S22 displays. So not like the S22 Ultra, which is really high resolution, and I love that display, but it is very similar to the S22 displays. So very nice. The battery life is a big thing between these two different devices. The Fold4 has 700 milliamps more of battery life. Of course, you could easily use that up by powering the large screen on the inside, but the battery life on both of these devices kind of works out to be similar depending on usage. Now, I have found that on the Fold4, I do use a lot more battery because I'm using this device as if it's a phone, but then also using it as if it's a tablet. And so I spend more time with screen on with the Fold4 just because I'm able to do more things. Whereas with the Flip4, I use this like I normally would, but I can get access to information on this screen. I can see who's calling. I can see little bits of information on the widgets, and it's good. I don't have to open the phone, so I'm getting less battery usage for things that I could do on this small display that normally I would have to wake the entire display to do, such as viewing calendar items, timers, alarms, music, all of that stuff, and then of course notifications as well. So those things are battery saving, and maybe also can be seen as limitations at the same time, because with that small display, like I could be doing that on a smartwatch or something instead, which I typically do, but I don't know, so we're splitting hairs at that point. Performance, both have the same processors, but the Fold 4 has more RAM and a 1 terabyte storage option. And so if you're needing that, then this is going to be the device. Now, being that you have a larger display, we've got a cover display on the front that's more than just a little info display, you do need that additional performance. And one of the things that people have talked about is, well, okay, if I'm multitasking, even if I have 3 or 4 apps pulled up at the same time and I'm doing multiple things, is it going to be powerful enough? Well, the Fold 4 definitely has enough power for that, and the Flip 4 has plenty of power for what most people are going to do with that phone as well. But there is more performance in the Fold 4 because of the additional RAM, so that gives it more overhead. The cameras, let's talk about those. Cameras are hugely important to me, and having the best cameras that are available is important to me. If that's not important to you, then this section perhaps doesn't matter as much. But for me, I want the best cameras, and the Fold 4 has the best cameras. It doesn't have the 10x camera of the S22 Ultra, but it has the best cameras that Samsung is producing right now. Now, on the Flip 4, I was really surprised because the cameras are not the top of the line cameras that we find in the Fold 4. However, the images that I was able to get out of the Flip 4 were really good, and I'm impressed with what Samsung has been able to do with maybe some older lens technology or sensor technology in this phone. So while it's not as good as the Fold 4, and I would say, the Flip 4 is not nearly as good as the S22 Ultra, it definitely pulls in well as a close second. For those of you that want great pictures, but you're not worried about the super finer details, you'll go get a bigger camera for that. The Flip 4 is going to be a great option for you. So I would say the Flip 4 is more on par with the cameras from the S21 models as far as what we see on the back of the display, but Samsung has definitely beefed up the software, and they're doing more with software to make sure that we're still getting great images out of the Flip 4. So let's talk about real-life usage with the Flip 4. The small footprint when it's folded is absolutely fantastic. I love the fact that this is smaller, it gets out of the way, and then you can open it up and have a full-size display and feel like I'm not sacrificing in any way because I have this smaller type of device. I will say though, it's not always easy to open. If I'm going to try and open this one-handed, it's not something that I can do fast without feeling like I'm going to fling the phone across the room. I find that it's much easier to open it up with a second hand while holding the device, and it's for sure easier to open up regardless if you have a case on it, because it's a nice thin phone, but with a case on it, it gives you a little more to hold on to. Now, I have found that the volume rockers on this are significantly high, and it requires me to scooch my hand up the phone to utilize them. Not that I'm always using volume rockers all the time, but it is odd that they are so high up on the phone, but I understand because of the hinge and everything, it's what has to be done. So the display cover is for sure more useful than last year's display cover on the previous models of this phone, but I will say that I still haven't found it to be super useful in my everyday life. The only thing that I end up using it for is to see who's calling or to see if a text message. Of course, notifications popping up on the screen is great, but I definitely try to minimize notifications because they're disruptions in my day, so only important notifications come through. It is nice to be able to see those on the display. The battery life lasts me a full day without issues, and I think that definitely lends to the fact that the cover display is something that I can utilize to see notifications, and the entire screen doesn't have to light up for that, and I don't have to open up the phone unless it's something that I really need to respond to. As I mentioned before, the cameras are pretty good, but they definitely rely on software to make up where maybe a better camera sensor could have done some more of the work. So software is good, but it definitely shows in some of the softness and edge details in your images. I will say one thing that I've gotten used to is screens not being so narrow. The screen is narrow on this device, not as narrow as the cover screen on the Fold4, but definitely still more narrow than I'm used to coming from the S22 Ultra or even an iPhone 14 Pro Max, something like that. The screen is wider, allowing for more to be there and more of a keyboard to display and just stuff like that. It's a little bit easier when the display is wider, but after a few days of use, it doesn't even matter. You don't even notice. And so the trade-off really is the display being a little bit more narrow, or the comfort of being able to fold this thing down and it be much more pocketable. Now, a lot of people will talk about the crease and the fact that the crease is definitely there, and from certain angles you could for sure see the crease, even though it's kind of hard for me to show you on a camera. This crease is there, but most of the time you're not going to notice the crease. When you're looking at the phone straight on, they've done a great job of minimizing the crease's visibility. Unless you're looking at it from an angle, then things start to pop up. And definitely it's more noticeable on darker backgrounds, or when you're viewing video that has darker scenes in it from a little bit of an angle. But looking directly on the device, you almost never notice the crease. So now let's talk about the benefits of the Fold4. Now, the larger display is really nice for productivity. Being able to open this up and have a lot more room for
so many activities,
gaming even, productivity definitely for me, having a web browser up while being able to still have a podcasting app or a YouTube video up, or have Notion up on half the screen and then a web browser up on the other half of the screen, and not feeling like I know I can do that on my S22 Ultra, but imagine just being able to do top and bottom little tiny square browsers. That's not useful. Being able to do that on a screen like this, where you can have basically two smartphone views next to each other, is definitely useful, and that's where multitasking on a device like this really comes alive, because you're able to do those things and actually have some screen real estate so that you can read what's on the screen and utilize both of the apps that you have opened. There's kind of a hybrid feel with this between a smartphone and a tablet, and maybe even what you might experience in a browser on a laptop when you're viewing certain apps. Certain apps end up displaying more information because of the additional resolution, and some are pretty much the same, being kind of letterboxed in the center. But the benefit there is that for the apps that do utilize more of the screen real estate, which are a lot of apps are responsive and will respond to the different screen sizes. It's not like Instagram or TikTok where you're just kind of squeezed into the middle. A lot of apps do give you more information on the display, which is absolutely fantastic. I will say that video playback, people say, oh, the larger display is great for video playback. And at first I kind of balked at this, because if you're viewing a video and you're not zooming in or changing its aspect ratio, you really aren't seeing anything larger than what you would see on a phone like this. Because if we unfold this phone and hold it this way, or even this way, we're getting approximately the same size. This might actually even be a little bit bigger of a view when viewing something that's not zoomed in. But what you can do on the Fold4 is actually pinch in and view something kind of in a square format, but you're seeing it much larger. And most of the stuff on the outer edges of videos, especially YouTube videos, there isn't much going on out there. And so I found actually zooming in and utilizing the entire display full screen, though I'm missing stuff on the outer edges of the YouTube video, is a great viewing experience and is a nice place to exist between a smaller smartphone screen and a larger tablet screen, but having that all in a single device. The main challenge for this device is it is a two-handed open device. I can try to open it single-handed, but it's just not going to happen. I mean, that was ridiculous. That's not the way that this device was intended to be used. It's a two-hand open operation. And so while that does take a bit more, and if you've got stuff going on with your other hand, you're carrying something, bag or whatever, you're not going to be able to get to the inside display that easily. But that's where the cover display really comes in and provides a lot of functionality, because it is like having a full functional smartphone, albeit a little bit more narrow. And then when you really need to get productive and you need a bigger keyboard and all that stuff, you open up the device. But it is a two-handed requirement. Early on with this device, I found myself using the cover display a lot because I hadn't transitioned the way that I use my technology into a device like this that has the capabilities of the Fold4. I was still using it like a smartphone, so I found myself using the cover screen all the time and being frustrated because it's so narrow. Utilizing the keyboard on the cover screen is kind of a pain. Even taking pictures with the camera, I feel like I'm missing out there because the screen just isn't very wide. And so until I utilize the device long enough to really find a groove in using this device and find features that made sense for me and actually put them to use, I was using the outside display and really not taking advantage of the full power of the Fold4 until I started changing my behaviors. The battery life on this device is absolutely fantastic, and in most cases will dwarf the battery life of the Fold4. However, if you start using this device to do a lot of things like watch video content later in the day, you're using the bigger screen a lot because you have some downtime and you're not just, you know, using your phone to answer calls and stuff. You're going and opening it up and using the bigger display. It will start to take away from that battery life pretty quick, but I've never had an issue getting full day use through this device. And when using mostly the outer display, I would get day and a half, sometimes even 2 days of full use of this device. So while it has quite a large battery because it's got batteries on both ends of the device and 700 milliamps more battery than the Flip4, it definitely gets you a little bit further through the day, but it does vary based on your usage. The real benefit for me this year compared to the previous versions of the Fold devices is the fact that they put real premium cameras in this device. The only thing we're missing out on is that 10x or the ability to zoom into 100x with the S22 Ultra, but the cameras on this device are fantastic, and most of the time I'm not going beyond the standard like 3 or 6x. I'm not going all the way to 10 most of the time, and so the cameras on this device absolutely fantastic, beautiful images, and then having the bigger display for editing and all of that stuff just really is the icing on top of that cake. Now, initially I spent a lot of time looking at the crease that goes all the way down the center of this device, but as I used the device more, the crease started to disappear. Like on the Flip4, unless I start to view this device from an angle and really look and try to find that crease, you're not going to see it that often. Even when you fold the device and really start to figure out how can I make this more visible, it blends in really well, and Samsung's done a great job of making sure that the crease is not as big of a distraction as it probably should be in most other instances. I do find that the glossiness of the display can be kind of obnoxious. That's actually more obnoxious than the crease itself, is the fact that the display is so glossy, and that also is something that bothers me on the Flip4 as well. Both screens are relatively glossy, but the creases are not something that I find myself fixating on. So who are each of these devices best suited for? Well, the Flip4 is for the person who wants a smaller form factor of a device that's a little more comfortable to carry, and they don't mind trading out some of the flagship features for a smaller device that is more compact. Now, flagship features, not many of them are missing from a device like this, being that it has the performance of a flagship device, but it's only lacking a few little things like a bigger display and better cameras. But overall, this is a fantastic device. Now, the Fold4 is for a person who really wants to unlock productivity, but doesn't want to carry multiple devices with them. This is where a smartphone and a tablet converge and become both devices, where it's not as large of a screen as a S22 Ultra, which is one of the bigger smartphones that you can get, and the tablet isn't as large as most tablets are. It's where they converge, and your ability to achieve phone things and tablet things in one device and that does require rethinking the way that you use your device to get the most out of this, and I talked more about that in my full review of the Z Fold4, so make sure to check that out. So my final thoughts on these devices are that both are excellent. They both have tons of features and functionality that looks different depending on what your use is when it comes to smartphones. I find flaws in both of these devices, really, being that the Flip4 is a struggle to open, being that it is a small, compact, convenient device. It would be a lot easier if it was easier to open, if it had maybe some sort of a spring assist action to where if I hit a little button on the side, it would spring opened, but not so hard that it would fling it out of my hand or something like that. That would be great. But the cameras are also lacking a little bit. This is not the type of device that I would want to carry with me all the time, because there would be some softness issues and its ability to autofocus extremely fast like the Fold, and it's just missing in those areas for me. The battery life's fine. Those things are great. It is an impressive phone in the sense that it is relatively small and extremely powerful for how small it is. The Fold4 is really cool, but it is bulky. It is thicker. This phone is thick because I have a case on it. This phone is still thick even without the case on it. And it's a lot to carry around with you. Not so much if you're used to carrying around multiple devices anyways, where this solves that problem of having to carry around multiple devices. I would justify the bulk just in the fact that it has great cameras, it has great displays, but it also gives me the ability to have the more screen real estate on the inside, which is a killer feature when it comes to being productive and spending more time on a device trying to get things done. Whereas on a smaller smartphone or even on a traditional size smartphone, that becomes tricky. So if I had to choose one, the Fold4 is definitely my option. And it wasn't that way at the beginning. At the beginning, when I first started spending time with these devices, I thought, well, really the Flip4 would be my choice because it's small, compact. While I don't like the cameras, I have cameras. I can carry another camera with me, but that's not very functional either, carrying a big camera like this with me all the time. So as I started using these devices more and finding more utility in the Fold4, my opinion changed and the Fold4 became the device that I was mostly interested in, because I'm always going to be carrying a bigger camera with me, but when I don't want to, I have really nice cameras on the back of the smartphone for capturing great images. Especially my wife and I went hiking. I didn't want to carry a big camera on me, and this phone just took absolutely great images, and this phone took good images that could be considered great, but in my opinion the Fold4 was better. So combine that with the additional functionality that you get with the big display, better for productivity and for multitasking, the Fold4 was definitely the winner for me. But what I have to say to Samsung is that they should keep dreaming and keep innovating, because they're onto something with these devices. This solves a problem for some people that want something smaller and they want a great smartphone, but they just don't want it to take up so much space. And then the Fold4 solves problems for the person who wants a smartphone but wants the space that a tablet provides without having to carry a tablet with them. So these are new converging spaces that are taking a lot of time for people to really figure out what the best fit is for them. And so with that, you have to look at these devices in a different way than you would if you were just going to use a standard smartphone, because they're different and they have to be used differently. And that's where the true functionality and usefulness of these devices start to shine. So I hope that this video helped you better understand these devices a little bit and how you might utilize them in your own life. This wasn't the traditional review where we just bang specs against each other and hope for the best. It definitely comes down to how you're going to use these devices, because if you don't approach them from a different mindset, you're not going to find functionality or enjoyment in any of these devices, and you'll find yourself going back to a traditional smartphone. So with that, let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section below. I've got links in the description for you to some of the accessories and things that I use with these devices that definitely made the experience better. Make sure to check out my case videos too, should you decide to purchase either one of these devices. The cases definitely are a must on these devices. But that's going to do it for this video. Click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel on State of Tech, and I hope to see you back in another one soon. Take care.